I was very depressed when Ethan Coen retired and left his brother alone in black and white Shakespeare purgatory. I was depressed because there are millions of people in the world who lie awake at night wishing they were good at something. And he is very good at what he does. And I believe that people who are good at what they do kind of need to keep doing it. Forever. For the rest of us. And that's just what I believe. I believe that Martin Scorsese needs to make a movie every year until he dies. He needs to do that, and we need him to do that, because art is in as perilous a position as it's ever been. Not just because our greatest minds are crying out to censor one another, but because the generation growing up behind us has had iPads shoved into their hands since before they were able to shake a rattle, and all it has taught them is how to be quiet. I worry that we are not raising a generation of dreamers. We need people who are good at art to make good art so that future generations can dream of greatness. And we're failing our future. We're pacifying them with cheap entertainment rather than exciting them with great art. And when I say we, I do include myself in this. I have 3 children, and I wish that they would be quiet almost all of the time. And they never are, any of the time. One of them, my oldest son, is angry all the time. His little brother is jealous all the time. And my third, my daughter, is always wandering off all the time and forcing us to go find her. So more often than not, in an attempt to manage this madness, I end up sticking an iPad in their hands so that they can all quiet down. And that's something that I will have to answer for in heaven. And I tried to resist it for a few years, the first 2 kids. But of course, children socialize each other. And every play date they ever went on, some tired parent strapped them into a godless Apple product. And they loved it, So who am I to force them to swim against the wave of the future? Except their parent. And I don't. And it's no good. And I'm no good. I'll tell you this. I built these kids a fort the other day. And I mean a real fort. I'm talking the best fort you ever saw in your life. Stacked to the ceiling, these pillows. Blankets draped everywhere you look. I'm a gifted fort builder. And it's not even a gift because I worked at it for years. I studied. I spent my youth in workshops as an apprentice to a master fort builder. He gave up his golden years to teach me all that he knew so that I could, in turn, pass his craft on to the next generation. And I did, so I built a good fucking fort for these kids. And they looked at it for a good 10 seconds, and they tell me they want to bring their iPad into the fort. And I said no. And they said, why? And I said, because I built you a good fort, play in the fort. And then they said something that chilled me to my bones. There's nothing to do in the fort. Please, can we play with the iPad in the fort so we have something to do? And again, I said no. And again, they said, why? And I said, because you're not going to develop a meaningful inner world. You won't. Read a book. Play a game. They don't even use these iPads to play games. They just take pictures of themselves giving thumbs up to the camera. And it's very cute. No one taught them how to do that. I don't want those pictures to stop, but I also don't want them to replace their ability to dream, When I was a child, I could turn 2 rocks and a stick into the greatest damn fort you ever saw. I would duck underneath it and shoot fireballs up at zombie Nazis from space. Unpack that. That means I had imagined an alien planet which had experienced nuclear holocaust, which took place years after a period of interstellar fascism that resulted in a regular holocaust. Then the nuclear fallout from the nuclear holocaust was such that it brought these Nazis back to life, and they still had the cognitive capacity to make it to space. This is how it goes when my children play games. The angry one says, I'm going to be a stupid character from Minecraft. And the jealous one says, no, I want to be the stupid character from Minecraft. And then the angry one says, no, you have to be the guy that hits the build button, stupid. It almost makes me glad that the little girl keeps running away, because I know that one day she will be able to get lost and find herself. She did get lost. She got very lost once. I had to round up her angry and jealous brothers in order to go find her. I couldn't just leave them in the house alone. They'd burn it down, or worse, they would use my iPad in the fort. So I take them with me, and we're calling the sister's name. And we get to the end of the street, and, they're asking me, can we play on the iPad? And at this point, I'm very worried, because I didn't see their sister anywhere. So I kept walking down the street and calling her name. I kept saying, Broomhild, and I didn't hear anything back. And then suddenly it got dark. So I ran back to the house, hoping she'd already come home. Even if she hadn't, I can't leave my sons alone that long, But when I opened the door, they're all gone. And what's worse, my fort was neatly put away. And now I'm terrified, because I know there's no way my children did that. So I called their mom. Maybe she picked them up without telling me, which, of course, she didn't. She's not insane. But she's talking to me like I am, because I'm rambling, trying to explain to her that I have lost all 3 of our children. And that was the last conversation I really had with her. That was the last conversation I really had with anyone except for the police, or I hired a private investigator, who also doesn't want to talk to me at this point. The last time I spoke to him, he said, why don't you go see a movie? And I did. I was lying up in bed one night, and I decided to go for it, take my mind off it for a little while. I actually went to see Macbeth from Joel Coen. It's good, I guess. Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand, always good. So is Shakespeare, I presume. But, for a while, their combined efforts were enough to make me forget myself. Until I was in the theater, and there was this family in front of me, and they were talking through the whole fucking movie. Young kids were talking through a Joel Coen Shakespeare murder play movie. And they were kind of making astute observations, but it was still annoying, They were laughing at jokes that I didn't even know were jokes, gesturing at the screen and actually pointing out meaningful things like, oh, did you see what he did there? Notice how far away the light source is? Oh, he loves that. That's a nod to the silent era right there. He's connecting the vulgar masters of the early form to the world's greatest dramatist. They're saying things like that, and I find it very annoying. So I tap the dad on the back of the head, and I say, hey, man, silence is golden. Can you get these kids a fucking iPad? And the guy said, sorry. And it blew my mind. Because the guy was Ethan Coen. Can you believe that? And he went on mumbling with his kids, but I don't care anymore. It's Ethan Coen. He's, fucking very good at what he does, and I'm getting a free lecture. And I thought to myself, no wonder he retired. This dude's got a lot of fucking kids. I could hardly hear him over their chatter, One of the kids said, you know what's stupid? I think your brother may actually be crueler to his protagonists than William Shakespeare. And I laughed. And then I stopped laughing because I recognized that voice. It was my angry son. Then I heard another voice answer, I was going to say that. I whispered that to Broomhild, and he said it out loud. And it was my jealous son. being a jealous little piece of shit. And Ethan Coen said, "Oh, where is your sister?" And then I saw my little Broomhild walking back from the concession stand with a bunch of disgusting candy that her mother would be furious if she saw them eat. She'd be madder about that than me losing them. But there she was, eating the candy. And she turns to Ethan Coen and says, wait, look at this. And I look up at the screen, and Frances McDormand looks right up at the camera and gives it a big fucking thumbs up. And I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at my daughter, and she turns to Ethan Coen and says, "I gave him that." And I start crying, and my face flashes fire. And I tap Ethan Coen on the back of the head, and I say, "Hey, what's the deal, man? You a fucking pedophile or what?" He says, "No." I said, "These are not your fucking kids. They're mine." And my kids say, "Hey, Daddy." And I say, "Shut the fuck up, kids. Play with your iPad." But then my daughter, she does something that she's never done before. She said, "No, thank you, Daddy. I don't want the iPad. I'm watching a movie." And then my jealous son says, "But I don't want to play with the iPad either. I want to watch the movie too." And my angry son says to him, "Shut up and watch it then." And I said, "Thank you, son. I love you." And Ethan Coen said, "This is just what I do now. I retired from making movies so I could take on apprentices and pass on my knowledge to the next generation. I saw your daughter walking down the street one day, and I could tell her she had this fabulously complex inner world. So I made her my little friend and showed her how I got good at what I do." And I'm still crying. My heart's still in my stomach. But I take one of my daughter's disgusting candy bars and I start stress chewing it. And I looked at Ethan Coen in the face and I said, "That's good. Not that you took my children, that's not even okay. But it is good for you to retire if you're going to devote your time to workshops and teaching your craft to the next generation so that people with something to say can learn how to make something good, you know? In fact, it's totally fair if the great artists want to retire. Mazel, you don't owe us anything. I take back what I said, but you do owe something to art. You owe your muse. You owe something to the source from which you drew your great work. And art in the abstract is on a tripwire. It is in the most precarious place it's been in modern history, and you owe your wisdom to the future. You know, a master should work with the youth so that they make masterworks. So go, retire, but give your time. Don't sit around making NFTs. And there's nothing wrong with NFTs, but don't go sit around making NFTs. Go teach. Unless you're Martin Scorsese or Ethan Coen. But he can't because I killed him. I think he's a pedophile. I was worried that he fucked my kids.